The bank had already nailed the eviction notice to her door when I pulled into the driveway, and the moment I saw her standing there in the rain, clutching a cardboard box against her chest like it was the only thing holding her together, I knew my life was never going to be the same again. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the idea that one small act can change everything, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling me you're watching, share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this one deserve to be told, and deserve to be remembered. My name is Daniel Reyes, and 3 years ago I was nobody's idea of a hero. I was a contractor, 34 years old, divorced, tired, running a small renovation business that barely kept the lights on in my own apartment. I fixed roofs and rebuilt porches for people who could afford it, and most days I drove home wondering if any of it mattered. I wasn't looking for meaning. I was looking for my next job. That's how I ended up on Willow Street that October morning, quoting a gutter repair for a woman named Margaret Hale. Margaret was 68 years old, a retired schoolteacher who had lived in that same small blue house for 41 years. Her husband had built the porch swing with his own hands before he passed away, and every fall she planted the same yellow chrysanthemums along the front walk because he used to love them. She told me all of this while I was up on her ladder, not because I asked, but because she was the kind of woman who talked to everyone like they were an old friend, even a stranger fixing her gutters. There was something about her voice, warm and a little tired, that made me stop working for a second and actually listen. It was during that conversation that she mentioned, almost in passing, that she was behind on her property taxes. Her late husband's pension had been mismanaged by a financial advisor who turned out to be a fraud, and after legal fees and medical bills from her own surgery the year before, she was thousands of dollars short of what the county needed by the end of the month. She said it so lightly, like she was talking about the weather, but I saw her hands shake when she said the word foreclosure. She quickly changed the subject, embarrassed, and asked if I wanted a glass of lemonade instead. I said yes, mostly because I didn't know what else to say. I finished the gutter job that day and told her there was no charge. It was a small thing, $20 worth of caulking and an hour of my time, but she cried anyway, right there on her porch, and thanked me like I'd given her a diamond. I drove away telling myself that was the end of it. I had done my good deed. I had my own bills to worry about. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. For the next 2 weeks, I told myself it wasn't my problem. I had my own struggles. My business was hanging by a thread, my ex-wife and I were still fighting over things that didn't matter anymore, and I hadn't taken a real day off in months. I didn't have thousands of dollars sitting around to hand to a stranger, no matter how kind she'd been to me over a glass of lemonade. Every time I drove past Willow Street on my way to another job, I slowed down without meaning to, and every time I saw her out front, tending to those yellow flowers like nothing was wrong, something in my chest twisted a little tighter. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I saw the notice. It was taped to her door, bright orange, impossible to miss even from the street. Notice of delinquent taxes. Final warning. I parked my truck across the road and just sat there for a long time, staring at that piece of paper flapping in the wind, and something in me broke open. I thought about my own grandmother, who had raised me after my parents split, who had worked double shifts at a diner just to keep a roof over our heads, and who had lost that same fight when I was 17 years old. I remembered the day the bank took our house, and I remembered the look on her face, not anger, not even sadness, just a quiet kind of defeat that I never wanted to see on another human being again. I couldn't walk away. Not this time. I started small. I picked up extra jobs, working weekends I used to spend recovering, taking on projects I would normally have turned down because they were too far or too much hassle. I sold my old truck's spare parts, cashed in savings I had been keeping for emergencies, and called in favors from every contractor friend I had. I even reached out to a local news reporter I barely knew, asking if she'd be willing to write a small piece about an elderly widow facing foreclosure after being scammed by a fraudulent advisor. She said yes, and within days the story started to spread further than either of us expected. Neighbors I had never met started dropping off envelopes at Margaret's door. A local church took up a collection. A stranger from 2 towns over mailed a check with a note that simply said, "Your husband built that swing. Don't let anyone take it from you." It still wasn't enough. 2 days before the deadline, we were still short almost $4,000, and I remember sitting in my truck outside her house at midnight, running numbers in my head over and over, trying to find some way to close the gap. I thought about my daughter, who I hadn't seen enough of that year because I'd been working so hard just to survive myself. I thought about what it would mean to fail Margaret now, after getting her hopes up, after letting her believe that someone in this world still cared enough to fight for her. So I did something I never thought I would do. I took out a loan against my own small business, the very thing I had spent a decade building from nothing, and I used it to cover the rest. My accountant told me I was out of my mind. My ex-wife told me I was being reckless. Maybe they were right. But some decisions aren't made with your head. Some decisions are made with whatever's left of your heart after life has tried its best to wear it down. On the morning of the deadline, I walked up to Margaret's door with the final payment confirmation in my hand, my palms sweating, my heart pounding harder than it had in years. I hadn't told her what I'd done. I hadn't told her about the loan, or the sleepless nights, or the fear that I might have just gambled away everything I'd built. I just knocked, and when she opened the door, I told her simply that the house was safe, that the taxes were paid in full, that no one was going to take it from her. I will never forget the way she looked at me in that moment. Her eyes filled with tears before she even understood what I was saying, like some part of her already knew. Some part of her had been waiting for this exact sentence for weeks without daring to hope for it. And then, as the words sank in, her whole face changed, the way a room changes when someone finally turns on the light after a long, dark winter. She didn't say thank you right away. She just stood there, one hand pressed against her chest, staring at me like I was something she couldn't quite believe was real. When she finally spoke, her voice broke on every word, and she said that in 41 years in that house, through every hardship, every loss, every hard winter, she had never once felt as seen as she did in that moment, standing on her porch, looking at a stranger who had chosen to become family. That look stayed with me long after I drove away that day. It wasn't gratitude exactly, or not only gratitude. It was something closer to recognition, like she was looking at proof that the world hadn't given up on people like her after all. I have thought about that look more times than I can count in the years since, especially on the hard days, the days when my own bills piled up and I wondered if I'd made a mistake sacrificing so much for someone I barely knew. I never regretted it. Not once. Margaret and I stayed close after that. She started coming to my daughter's birthday parties, bringing homemade pie every single time. She taught my daughter how to press flowers between the pages of old books, the same way she used to do with her own children decades earlier. My business slowly recovered, helped along, ironically, by the same news story that had once been about her hardship, which brought in more clients than I ever could have imagined. People wanted to hire the contractor who cared more about people than profit. Funny how life works that way sometimes, how the very act of giving everything away ends up bringing more back to you than you ever expected. Margaret passed away 2 years later, peacefully, in that same little blue house, surrounded by the yellow chrysanthemums her husband had loved so much. At her funeral, her niece pulled me aside and told me something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She said that in Margaret's final weeks, she had talked about me constantly, telling anyone who would listen about the contractor who showed up to fix her gutters and ended up saving far more than just her house. She said Margaret used to say that I hadn't just kept a roof over her head. I had reminded her, in the last chapter of her life, that kindness still existed in this world, freely given, without condition, without expectation of anything in return. If this story touched your heart even a little, I want you to take a moment right now and hit that like button, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who needs to believe in good people again, because stories like Margaret's deserve to travel further than either of us ever could have imagined. And before we go, I want to ask you something. In the comments below, tell me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, or a time you were able to help someone else when it truly mattered. I read every single comment, and I promise you, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Because in the end, that's what this whole journey taught me. We don't always get to choose the moments that define us. Sometimes they show up uninvited, on a rainy afternoon, on a stranger's porch, in the shape of an old woman clutching a cardboard box like it's the last piece of her life she has left. But when that moment comes, when you feel that pull in your chest telling you to do something, to not walk away, I hope you listen to it. Because I did, and it didn't just save Margaret's home. It saved a part of me I didn't even know was lost. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.